Welcome back. Welcome to the Premier Mindset by Premier Performance LLC. I'm your host, Trent Mailer, LCSW, clinical therapist and performance coach, and this is episode 33. Most people think great decision making is about always knowing the right answer. Quick instincts, flawless judgment, never hesitating. But that's not real decision making under pressure. That's fantasy. The truth is, even the best leaders, athletes, and performers doubt themselves in the moment. What separates elite performers isn't certainty, it's how they act when everything's uncertain. Pressure shows up everywhere. The final play with seconds left, the boardroom pitch that could change your career, or the tough call that keeps you up at night. In those moments, your brain doesn't want clarity, it wants safety. And that's exactly when most people freeze, overthink, or play it too safe. High achievers face this more than anyone, because the stakes are higher and the margin for error is smaller. Today we're breaking down how to make clear, confident decisions under pressure, how to trust your instincts without losing discipline, how to manage the mental chaos that shows up in big moments, and how to turn stress into focus instead of panic. Quick note before we dive in, this podcast is for education and performance growth. It's not a replacement for therapy or medical treatment. If there are things you need, make sure you go get them. You can watch full episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and the audio-only version on Apple Podcasts as well. I'll also be sharing clips across Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and X. So hit subscribe or follow to catch every drop of new content. We have new podcasts coming out every week with new content dropping every day on the social media sites. And all the links are in the show notes. So check those out and jump into those communities with us. If you've ever felt the weight of a decision and second-guessed yourself in the moment, this episode is for you. So let's get into it. What is decision-making under pressure? Decision-making under pressure involves making effective choices in high-stress situations where time, information, or resources are limited. Key strategies to improve this skill include pausing to breathe and calm the mind, separating emotions from reality to avoid impulsive reactions, clarifying priorities, and simplifying choices to a few options. Practicing these techniques, along with preparing for potential consequences and using decision frameworks, can help one make more rational and effective decisions in stressful situations. What happens in the brain under pressure? The prefrontal cortex goes offline, and the amygdala and stress response take over. Under pressure, your brain stress response, called an amygdala hijack, causes the prefrontal cortex to temporarily shut down, leading to a fight or flight reaction. This is a lot of what we talked about in episode 1 with the threat system. This makes it difficult to think clearly, solve problems, or focus as the brain prioritizes survival over higher order thinking. This results in actions that can feel automatic and irrational, which often leads to questions of why am I doing these things? Now, what happens in the brain? Like we talked about, the prefrontal cortex goes offline. This part of the brain responsible for logic, problem-solving, decision-making, and focus is temporarily disengaged, so we're not able to access it. The amygdala ends up taking over. The amygdala is the brain's alarm system. It takes control to initiate the body's survival response, or fight or flight. Once fight or flight is triggered, the body prepares for immediate physical danger, flooding the system with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline ready to get going, ready to get moving. We also have physiological changes. The heart rate increases, digestion slows, breathing becomes shallow, and muscles tense up. Further complicating it, we also have cognitive impairment that shows up as well. You may also feel like you can't think straight. Your mind goes blank, or you have difficulty remembering things because the brain prioritizes survival over complex thought. Think about it in your own life. Think of the times where things are going wrong and you just totally forget what to do. It could be in the moment when the panic is setting in. It could be when you're feeling totally overwhelmed. But if we're not taking care of ourselves, these things can take over and shut down, and we just jump into that reactive fight or flight mode to keep us safe. This happens for a lot of reasons. This process is a biological defense mechanism designed for immediate threats. It's designed to keep us alive, which is the number one goal of our brain, which isn't a bad thing that it's doing. We just got to show it when we're actually under threat versus when we're actually safe. Sometimes our biggest problem is believing we are under threat and this is a matter of survival, when really it is stress and we are safe, we are just overwhelmed. Your brain doesn't distinguish between a real physical threat like a tiger and a modern stressor like a public speaking engagement or an important deadline, because the difference doesn't really matter. It is looking at the symptoms, it's looking at the signals, what's going on inside the body. And a lot of times our body responds exactly the same way as it would to a tiger when facing something like a public speaking engagement. Hijacking is a natural reaction to stress. It's not a sign of weakness. A great way to look at this is the Yerkes-Dodson law. We talked a little bit about this in the past with trying to find that peak performance angle when you're optimally arousing your body to a point of activation, but not over arousing your body to a point where it's going to shut down. The Yerkes-Dodson law talks about how performance peaks at moderate stress, where too little equals boredom and too much equals panic. So we want to find the sweet spot. Low stress or hypoarousal, at the end of this curve, performance is poor because of a lack of stimulation, energy, or motivation, usually leading to boredom. Think of times when you're working on something that just hasn't caught your attention and you're doing the thing, but you're kind of halfway doing it or disconnected while you're doing it. Moderate stress. This is the optimal arousal. Performance is at its peak when arousal is at moderate level. This stress acts as a motivator, increasing focus and efficiency without becoming overwhelming. If we go too far, we get into high stress or hyperarousal. If stress is too high, it can lead to panic, overwhelm, and a breakdown in cognitive function, causing a significant drop in performance. Task complexity is also a big part of this. The optimal level of stress varies depending on the task. Simple tasks can handle higher arousal, while complex tasks require a lower level of stress to perform well. So being aware of what we're doing, how complex is the task that we're working on right now, that's also going to influence how much we want to activate ourselves or get our body aroused. Fight, flight, or freeze in decision making, why some people take impulsive action while others shut down. In a high stress situation, the choice between impulsive action like fight or flight and shutting down like freeze is an automatic survival response governed by the nervous system and shaped by a person's individual history. This non-conscious process prioritizes avoiding danger over deliberate, rational thought, leading to a fundamentally different outcome for different people. So a lot of what we have gone through in the past shapes how we deal with stresses when they show up in our life. So that's something to keep in mind, and this is why sometimes therapy or coaching dives into the past to figure out why we're doing what we're doing, to try and break the patterns and start new ones, new habits. Cognitive narrowing. How stress reduces situational awareness and creates tunnel vision. Stress causes cognitive narrowing by activating that fight or flight response, which narrows attention to the immediate threat, reducing awareness of surroundings and impairs decision making. This tunnel vision means the brain prioritizes a single focus, ignoring peripheral cues and other important information, which can be dangerous in stressful situations. So this happens a lot, and it's almost like putting blinders on to hyper-focus on whatever's in front of us. This may have happened to you at some point when you're gotten really angry or just overwhelmed and feel like you're blacking out on the edges of your vision. And that's what that cognitive narrowing is doing. It's trying to block these things out so you hyper-focus on what's directly in front of you. Because when there is a threat, we're probably looking at it. So it's saying we don't need to look at anything else. Let's deal with this threat. So again, it's part of that survival response. It's trying to keep us alive. It just ends up causing issues and problems in our life if we don't take care of these things. A great example of decision-making under pressure occurred on January 15, 2009. Captain Sullenberger of U.S. Airways Flight 1549 made a split-second life-saving decision after a bird strike disabled both of the plane's engines shortly after takeoff from New York's LaGuardia Airport. With only 208 seconds before the plane would crash, Sullenberger had to quickly assess his options, which included attempting to return to the airport or landing in the Hudson River. Relying on his 42 years of aviation experience, he determined that reaching an airport was impossible and instead chose the high-risk water landing. His calm, professional demeanor and decisive action resulted in a successful ditching of the plane and the survival of all 155 people on board. This is a great example of that when things are going wrong, we have to make decisions when that pressure is on us. And sometimes we got to trust our experience. Sometimes we got to trust the tools we have. Sometimes we got to trust the people we're working with. We're going to have different options in different situations, but we have to make the best decision we can while that pressure is on. Otherwise, things don't go well and other people can get hurt, especially depending on what we're doing. Decision fatigue. How too many choices drain your willpower and your clarity. Decision fatigue is a state where your brain's mental energy is depleted by making too many choices, both big and small, leading to poor judgment and a drained sense of willpower. This occurs because each decision, from choosing an outfit to responding to an email, consumes cognitive resources, and over time, this leads to mental exhaustion. To combat it, one can simplify and automate routine decisions, limit time spent on choices, prioritize rest, and focus on making good enough decisions instead of perfect ones. You see this a lot with a lot of CEOs, a lot of people that work in high up positions where you have to make a lot of decisions all day long. Zuckerberg is a great example of this with his lack of choosing outfits in the morning. He tends to wear a lot of the same things or has things already picked out for himself, so he doesn't have to think about it. He just puts on his clothes. Again, limiting those decisions, trying to maximize and optimize the power he has when he's making important decisions with what he's doing and the work he's working on, instead of trying to spend that energy on something like choosing out an outfit. So be aware of what we're spending energy on making decisions in our everyday life and trying to prioritize putting those energy and in those time investments towards decisions that are going to better help us and be more productive, rather than letting it lean on things that aren't going to really matter too much in our day. Albeit, this is situational. If you are in the world of fashion, picking out your outfit to start your day is going to be a big part of it. So again, we have to be aware of context and what we're doing. Let's talk a little more about how decision fatigue works. First thing it does is it depletes willpower. The mental energy required for decision making is a finite resource that diminishes with use, similar to a phone battery draining over time. So we have to be aware of how much we have and use it on important things, not letting it drain just watching ads, doing things that aren't important. It impacts judgment. When mentally fatigued, people are more likely to make riskier or poorer choices because their ability to evaluate options is skewed. Now we're not looking at things the right way, or we're not looking at things as accurately, and that's going to cause problems itself. So it's going to impact our judgment. Increases stress. The constant need to make choices can lead to increased stress, anxiety, and feeling of being mentally drained, which can impact every area of our life, just holding that stress as we go through our everyday life. And it applies to all choices. It's not just large decisions that cause fatigue. A high volume of small everyday decisions, like choosing a font or emoji, adds up and consumes mental energy. There are some strategies to reduce decision fatigue. Automate routine choices. Create routines for daily tasks like what to eat for breakfast or what to wear to save mental energy for more important decisions. Simplify options. Limit the number of choices you have to make. For example, by creating a uniform or pre-planning your weekly meals. Then we take those options away. They're a little more set up and simplified. They're easier to take advantage of. Prioritize and delegate. Focus on the most important decisions and delegate tasks to others when possible. We can't do it all ourselves. Sometimes we want to, due to that feeling of control and feeling like we can do things and do it the best. Sometimes we got to let other people take the lead and do the things for us. We can't do it all ourselves. There's no way to build an empire by yourself. We need others. Set time limits. Allocate specific time slots for making decisions to avoid excessive deliberation and overthinking. Sometimes we have to make the decision even without more information coming in. So holding ourselves to a time limit of I have to make this decision by 3 o'clock today means that I'm going to spend a certain amount of energy on this, but once I hit that point, I have to just trust my gut and go with what I think is the best choice, even if it's not perfect or it's not super clear. Going further with this, we have to embrace good enough. Let go of the need to find the absolute perfect choice for every situation, as a good enough option often saves significant mental energy, and we need to prioritize saving that energy for more important, bigger things. Sometimes we have to just make the choice that works enough, and we can fix and update things later, especially if something goes wrong. And most importantly, we have to prioritize self-care. Ensure you get enough sleep, exercise, and eat balanced meals to maintain your cognitive function and mental clarity. If you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to perform well. So we have to take care of ourselves so we can operate at that high level. How to buy time for your brain. We can buy time by breathing, grounding, using micro pauses to reset decision systems. We can reduce stress, calm your nervous system, and also improve focus. Doing these things creates a space between a trigger and your response, allowing you to choose how to act rather than to react impulsively. Sometimes we need to buy time before making that decision. There are thousands of different skills and techniques you can use to help buy time and help calm that body as you're making decisions. So there's a lot of things we could talk about. We could spend a whole hour talking about just skills and techniques alone, but we're going to touch on it briefly because we've talked about a lot of these through a lot of different episodes. So make sure to check out those episodes, specifically like distress tolerance, different ones about calming our body in the moment when things are intense. Buying time for your brain involves interpreting automatic, reactive patterns to regain more mindful decision making, which gets us into a spot where we're going to make decisions we're happier with in the long run. We also have the OODA loop. The OODA loop, which is OODA, stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. This helps us make quick, adaptive decisions while in chaos. So the OODA loop is a 4-step decision-making process, which is used by fighter pilots to make quick, adaptive decisions in chaotic, competitive environments. First, you observe the situation and gather information. It's the first step, observe. Then you orient by analyzing and interpreting the information in the context of your goals and existing knowledge, which is the orient piece. Next, you decide on a course of action, and finally, you act on that decision without delay. The D and the A, decide and act. This process is continuous as your actions create a new situation that you must again observe, and the goal is to cycle through the loop faster than your opponent, which leads to success in whatever you're doing. So use that OODA loop in what you're doing in your life now, whether it's your career, your business, a competitive thing you're going after, or something else. Another military principle that you can take advantage of is the 80% rule. This is a U.S. Army principle. You want to make decisions when you have 80% of the information, not 100%. The principle of making a decision with 80% of the information rather than waiting for 100% is a guideline for balancing preparedness and action. This concept, also referred to as the 80% solution by the Marine Corps, is related to the well-known Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule, but is applied specifically to decision-making under uncertainty. The military principle is rooted in a high-stakes environment of armed conflict and applies to any situation where perfection is unachievable and where delays carry a high cost. It helps us avoid analysis paralysis. Striving for 100% certainty can cause a leader to become bogged down in a never-ending quest for more information. Waiting too long can lead to a missed opportunity or strategic disadvantages, so we must make a move and do it before the other side does. This is really important not only in armed conflict, but also in business. It also helps us accept necessary imperfection. In combat and other dynamic situations, a perfect solution doesn't exist. Leaders must accept that they will be making decisions with imperfect information and prepare to adapt as circumstances change, because things will change. Sometimes we can't just wait to see what's going to happen. We have to jump into it and do something. This is something that a lot of business professionals deal with. This is something a lot of entrepreneurs deal with. This is partly the work that we're doing at Premier Performance to help you guys better deal with these situations and handle them, making better decisions on your part so you are more successful with what you're doing. It also prioritizes rapid action. Making a timely decision with enough but not all information is often more valuable than a perfect decision made too late. Time spent pursuing the final 20% of information is often disproportionate to the added value it actually provides. And we also embrace adaptation. The 80% rule assumes that the initial decision is not the final step. The situation will continue to evolve, and the plan can be improved and adjusted as more information becomes available as we are making those decisions. Another thing we can use is the pre-mortem strategy. Imagining failure before you start to identify blind spots. The pre-mortem strategy is a project management technique where a team imagines a project has failed before it even begins. By looking back from a hypothetical point of failure, team members can identify potential risks, hidden blind spots, and flawed assumptions. This exercise encourages a proactive approach to risk mitigation rather than a reactive one. We're looking to be preventive instead of reactive. There are some key benefits to pre-mortem. It overcomes overconfidence. The optimistic bias common at the start of a project can cause teams to overlook major risks. By assuming failure, the pre-mortem forces participants to think critically. It reveals hidden risks. The perspective hindsight of imagining a failure has already happened can increase a team's ability to correctly identify the reasons for future outcomes by as much as 30%. So it's also research backed. This stuff does really work. It fosters psychological safety. The hypothetical nature of the exercise creates a safe environment for team members to voice their concerns without fear of blame or appearing negative. This can surface issues that might otherwise remain unsaid. Think of the times when you heard of something at work that you didn't agree with or didn't think was going to work out, and you just kept your mouth shut and just went along with it out of fear of what people might think if you brought it up or pushed against what they wanted to do. It improves decision making. By exposing weaknesses and testing assumptions early, teams can create stronger, more resilient plans before committing significant time and resources, so we can improve the decision making by being more efficient and not losing out on time doing things that aren't going to work. And it encourages collaboration. Involving cross-functional teams with diverse perspectives provides valuable insight into potential roadblocks and promotes collective ownership of the project's success. It naturally leads to more collaboration and more teamwork. A great example of decision-making under pressure, while also using teamwork, is the Apollo 13 mission control team. In April 1970, an oxygen tank explosion critically damaged the Apollo 13 spacecraft on its way to the moon. With 3 astronauts trapped 200,000 miles from Earth, NASA's mission control team in Houston had to quickly improvise a rescue mission. Under the calm, decisive leadership of Flight Director Gene Kranz, the team worked around the clock for 87 hours to solve life or death challenges. In one key decision, engineers used everyday material available on the ship to famously devise a way to fit a square lithium hydroxide canister from the command module into the round opening of the lunar module to scrub the toxic carbon dioxide from the air. The team's adaptability, clear communication, and relentless teamwork allowed them to bring the astronauts home safely in what became known as a successful failure. It's a pretty amazing situation that occurred. While it was very scary and a lot of people were keeping their eyes on it as it was happening, the way they handled it was pretty impressive and is still used as an example today. And there is a movie on it called Apollo 13. You can watch these things play out, which is a pretty fun movie to watch too if you want to. Second order thinking is considering the ripple effects of a decision beyond the immediate outcome. Second order thinking is a mental model that involves considering the ripple effect of a decision beyond its immediate first order outcome. It requires asking, and then what? This helps us explore the consequence of the consequences, helping to anticipate both positive and negative long-term impacts and avoid unintended results. This approach moves beyond simple linear causality to a more complex and strategic evaluation of a decision's full implications across different timelines and people. In order to apply second-order thinking, you first want to identify the first-order outcome. Determine the immediate, obvious result of your decision. Ask, and then what? For each first-order outcome, ask the question to predict the next layer of consequences. Then repeat the process. Continue asking, and then what, to identify second, third, and even higher order effects. Consider who is affected. Think about how your decision will impact different groups, such as customers, employees, or the community. And then evaluate long-term impact. Analyze how the ripple effects will unfold over time, potentially leading to unforeseen risks or opportunities. Some examples of second-order thinking. In business, a first-order thinker might implement a paywall on a product to increase immediate revenue. A second-order thinker would also consider that this could lead to decreased user loyalty and a negative perception of the product over time. So while first-order thinking, it makes perfect sense to do this, we have to be aware of the ripple effect of what that change will do. There is always cause and effect happening in anything we're doing. So anytime we change something or make a decision, something is going to change because of that. Heuristics versus analysis. When to trust your gut versus when to slow down and use logic. Knowing when to rely on heuristics, which are gut instincts, versus analytical thinking is a crucial skill for making effective decisions. Gut instinct offers quick, efficient mental shortcuts for familiar, low-risk situations, but can be prone to bias. Analysis, which is a slower, methodical process, is more reliable for complex, high-stake decisions where objectivity is essential. So gut instincts are mental shortcuts that allow the brain to make quick, effortless judgments based on past experiences, patterns, and emotions. This approach is valuable in situations where good enough solutions is needed quickly and gathering every piece of information is impractical. So these are really helpful in those 80% moments where we don't have all the information to make the perfect decision, so we have to make a good enough decision. We want to use those gut instincts when time is limited. If it's an emergency, such as a driver reacting to a swerving vehicle, a split-second decision based on instinct is necessary for safety. If the decision is low stakes, for daily routine decisions like what to eat for lunch or relying on a familiar choice, is an efficient use of mental energy. If you are an expert, deep, long-term experience in a specific field can build reliable intuition. For example, an experienced doctor may form a correct diagnostic hunch based on years of practice even before confirming tests are complete. We can also do this when data is limited or incomplete. In a novel situation with little information, intuition can help generate new ideas or spark creative solutions that data alone could not. So we want to keep that in mind, and we want to use these things to jump to action and get things moving when we need to. If we are able to gather more information, that can be helpful. But if we can't and we're in a time constraint, we're going to have to just make a call, and sometimes we got to do the best we can. Another tool we can use is mental contrasting, visualizing both success and obstacles before committing. Mental contrasting is a self-regulation strategy that involves visualizing a desired future outcome and then contrasting it with the obstacles of reality. This process helps increase motivation, strengthen goal commitment, and improve the likelihood of success by linking dreams to reality, preparing you to overcome challenges before they arise. This technique is a key part of the WOOP method, which is W-O-O-P, which stands for Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, Plan. So let's talk about how mental contrasting works. First, we want to visualize the positive future. Think about your goal and vividly imagine the positive outcomes and feelings associated with achieving it. Next, we want to contrast this fantasy with the present reality. Specifically focus on the obstacles and internal or external barriers that stand in the way of your goal. We want to acknowledge these obstacles rather than just focusing on the positive, providing the energy and clarity needed to prepare for and overcome them. A subsequent planning step, like the plan in WOOP, involves creating concrete if-then steps to address the identified obstacles. Why it is more effective than positive thinking alone? It avoids indulging. Simply fantasizing about success, indulging, can lead to complacency and lower achievement rates, as the fantasy itself can feel satisfying. It avoids dwelling. Dwelling only on the negative aspects of a situation without a vision of a better future can be demotivating and get us to stop doing the work. And it helps us create a clear path. Mental contrasting bridges the gap between aspiration and action by making you aware of potential problems beforehand, which allows you to make realistic plans to tackle them. All of this is really important with both athletes and business leaders. But let's talk first about athletes. Athletes can improve their decision-making under pressure by using techniques like visualization, deep breathing, and cognitive training. These help manage stress and sharpen focus. High-pressure situations activate the body's stress response, which can impair performance by increasing anxiety and tunnel vision, so developing coping strategies is crucial for success. Prioritization skills are also key, as athletes must learn to filter relevant information to make quicker, more accurate decisions, as time is key. Speed is important. This is why we're doing the work we do with athletes, is we're trying to provide these tools and skills to athletes in these situations so they can better improve their decision making and do what they need to be successful in the moment. This is really huge for people such as quarterbacks. Quarterbacks need to read defenses in about 3 seconds. So they have about 3 seconds to make a good decision. And if they don't, they could literally lose an entire game because of the decision they make. So that is a huge high pressure situation where one person is feeling the weight of the entire game on their shoulder every single decision they are making. And they make these decisions every play. This also happens with MMA fighters. Adjusting mid-fight while under fatigue, we have to understand what is going on, and if we're slow by a second or two, that could lead in you literally getting knocked out. Golfers, managing analysis paralysis on the final hole and getting to the actual action instead of sitting and thinking about angles and the best way to take the shot, but actually getting to the shot. Sometimes we just get stuck and frozen and we don't do the thing. We also see these in business leaders, like I was saying. Business leaders can improve decision-making under pressure by remaining calm, focusing on data over emotion, and using structured approaches like the 80-20 rule or breaking down problems. They should also prepare for outcomes, seek diverse perspectives, and pause to assess before acting. Building resilience, self-awareness, and a supportive team culture are also crucial for navigating high-stakes situations. CEOs making fast pivots during crisis are huge, and it's a key part of the role of CEOs. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Airbnb CEO Brian Chesky made a series of high-stakes decisions under pressure, and this led to success for Airbnb handling a really rocky time. The company's revenue plummeted by 70% in a matter of weeks, forcing the leaders to balance conflicting needs of guests, hosts, employees, and investors. Chesky's decision-making process was guided by core company values and defined by speed, transparency, and a renewed focus on its core business. So even when things are going wrong, if we can make the right decisions under pressure, you can save a company by pulling them out of a hole. Traders and investors deciding under volatility. This happens a lot with the stock market. Pressure is on constantly. We're seeing things ticking all of the time. So being able to handle that, feel that pressure, and make the best decision in that moment without panicking is going to lead to success. And if you don't, it could lead to bankruptcy. Entrepreneurs balancing interest and instinct versus data in early stage decisions. When we have interest in things such as passion that we're working towards, we can build some instinct. We build this like gut feeling piece. And we have to be able to act on the gut feeling and not just the data, especially early on in decision-making processes, because there's not always a right decision. And oftentimes we get caught up in that analysis paralysis before just making the decision. Sometimes we just got to get started. We just got to do something. So don't be afraid to trust yourself. And Premier Performance is here to help with this. We focus on helping specifically athletes, business professionals, and entrepreneurs deal with these things by better setting them up to make the best decision for them and guiding them through the decision-making process to better consult and figure out how to problem solving anything that's going wrong within it. The difference between pressure and stress. Pressure is external and stress is an internal response. Pressure is the cause and stress is the effect. An external pressure can cause an internal stress. Stress can also exist in the absence of external pressure, such as when material is subjected to pulling force on its ends. So we want to be aware of the pressure of what you're doing. That's going to come from the job, the activity, pressure from people, judgments, expectations. But the stress is something we feel internally. You can have pressure and not feel stress. You can feel stress and not feel pressure. They're not always linked, but they do often cause and affect each other. So we've got to be aware of the pressure we're getting, and we also got to be aware of the stress we're holding. Training composure. How repeated exposure builds stress inoculation. Repeated controlled exposure to stress builds composure through a process called stress inoculation. This functions like a psychological vaccine. By confronting manageable levels of stress, you teach your mind and body to respond with resilience rather than being overwhelmed by instinctive fight or flight reactions. So if you feel like you get caught in that fight or flight reaction quite often, the best way to get out of it is to keep showing yourself stress and showing yourself you can deal with it without jumping into that impulsive reactive mindset. This is the basis of stress inoculation training, or SIT, a form of cognitive behavioral therapy developed by psychologist Donald Meachenbaum, and it has 3 phases that use repeated exposure to build composure. The first is conceptual education. The first step is to understand the nature of stress and your personal responses to it. This involves recognizing what triggers your stress and identifying your typical ways of coping, whether they are helpful or not. During this phase, you learn that stress is manageable and that you can control your reaction to it. So this is us learning about it and really increasing our awareness about it. This is the main goal of what we're doing with the podcast, is trying to increase awareness so you guys better understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. Next is skill acquisition and rehearsal. In this phase, you learn and practice new coping skills tailored to your specific stressors, and there's a lot of different techniques you can use. It could be cognitive reframing, relaxation techniques, problem-solving skills, or even just visualization. We want to practice these things and keep doing them, which leads us to the third step, which is application and follow-through. This is where the repeated exposure happens. You begin by applying your new skills in low-stress scenarios and gradually increasing the difficulty. Each controlled exposure allows you to confront a trigger and practice your new coping techniques. Over time, this process diminishes your emotional reactivity and retrains your brain to perceive stressors as less threatening. You get used to it, you adjust to it, it gets easier. By starting small and building on each success, you create a mental toolkit for managing challenges with composure and adaptability. On top of all that, when things go wrong, we want to use fear as data instead of danger, decoding what your anxiety is actually signaling. When we use fear as data instead of danger, it involves treating anxiety as an informative signal rather than an overwhelming threat to be avoided. This approach frames fear and anxiety not as harmful emotions, but as data points that can reveal important insights about your needs, emotions, and thought patterns. By observing and decoding the information your anxiety provides, you can respond to its underlying causes in a constructive way. Self-talk and decision-making also have a big piece of this work, replacing what if this goes wrong with what's the next right move. To reframe your thinking from what if this goes wrong to what's the right next move involves shifting from a fear-based passive mindset to an action-oriented proactive one. This technique is rooted in a cognitive behavioral therapy, which focuses on changing negative thought patterns to improve behavior and mood. So we want to practice reframing how we look at these things, and the way we talk to ourselves does matter. So recognize the trigger. Pay attention to your self-talk and identify what if this goes wrong thought patterns. The first step is awareness, which is crucial for change. If we don't know something's happening, there's nothing we can do about it. Once we get to that point, we want to stop or pause. We want to interrupt that pattern. We don't want to keep going with the negative script. We want to call it out, stop it, and try and jump into something else. So maybe we can reframe with a question. Consciously replace the question about failure with an action-oriented one. You can ask yourself things like, what is one small step I can take right now? You could say, what is my next right move? You could say, what do I have control over in this situation? Changing this up to more action-oriented can help us get started. And instead of, what if I mess up this presentation, we can try, my next right move is to practice the first 3 slides. Because that's going to build us up and set us up in a situation where we can better handle this and better do what we need to do when that pressure is on. Instead of, what if I can't finish this project on time, we could try, my next right move is to break this task down into smaller manageable parts and do one little piece at a time. We got to try and take action and celebrate those small wins. Completing one small action reinforces your sense of control and competence, and like we talked about before with the episode about self-confidence and building self-esteem, that these things can build momentum and turn into bigger levels of control and feeling like you can handle things. So celebrate this progress to boost your confidence and build that momentum for the next step. We can also use confidence loops. These are those small, decisive actions creating momentum and building trust in your own instincts. It is a psychological feedback cycle where the small, decisive actions build momentum and strengthen your trust in your own instincts, which is a self-reinforcing process where action leads to competence. That competence further leads to building confidence, which in turn fuels more action. This process directly counters the common myth that you must feel confident before you can act. Sometimes we just got to do the things. And while we're evaluating things, we have to separate emotion from evaluation. How to debrief your choices objectively afterward. We should first separate the emotion from the evaluation by following a structured process of reflection. This involves intentionally pausing to reflect, focusing on factual observations, check the facts, and applying a logical, systematic analysis of the decision and its outcomes. The goal is not to eliminate emotions entirely, but to ensure they provide insight without clouding judgment. There are some issues we can fall into, like the overconfidence bias, which is trusting our gut too much without data. So we got to find that balance. We don't want to lean too much on that 80% where we start guessing and trying things instead of actually thinking it through and making a decision with the best information we have. Loss aversion is another one, which is a fear of failure leading to indecision or risk avoidance. Sometimes we avoid things because of the feeling that we could lose things. We have some other common thinking mistakes, like anchoring. The first piece of information disproportionately influencing the choice. So right now during fall, one of the big things going on is football, and some of you out there may be doing fantasy football leagues. Anchoring is a huge part of fantasy football. How a player does in the first week of the season tends to influence how we think about them and how we view them for the rest of the season going forward. That's the anchoring thinking mistake coming into play. Another piece is groupthink. Teams under pressure defaulting to conformity. So instead of thinking about what you think is the best option or the best way to do it, you kind of lean on what everyone else is thinking. We just go with the flow, go with the tribe. It's a tribalistic piece of us coming back out, and it's going to lead to bad decisions. Recency bias, giving too much weight to recent experiences instead of patterns. Sometimes we get caught up thinking that because it has happened recently, it's going to keep happening. Like playing roulette and seeing it hit on black the last 3 times, thinking the next time it's going to hit on black, even though it has absolutely no correlation with each other. How perfectionism kills decisiveness. Waiting for the perfect call instead of the right one. Published is better than polished. And I've had this struggle myself at times of wanting things to be perfect before putting it out to the world. Look, I just messed up right there, right? And part of that reason for it is we're worried about judgment. We're worried about what people are going to think, thinking it's not good enough. So we keep waiting and keep trying to polish things and making it perfect, when in reality, we just got to get started because we need real feedback to improve. This is something we talked about on episode 32 with perfectionism versus excellence, that we can't be perfect. We have to strive for the excellence, but we need to do the things and get into acting so we can see what's working, see what's not, and then we can make the adjustments we need to make to keep going from there. If we get caught up and stuck and freeze with that analysis paralysis, we're not going to get anything done. This is also why simulation and repetition is so important. Pilots, athletes, and special forces train chaos repeatedly so they could be comfortable being uncomfortable. This is a really good skill for people in these high achieving positions. You want to be comfortable being uncomfortable because things are going to go wrong. And if you're comfortable in that state, you're going to be able to succeed in that state. So we have to get used to it. We have to adjust. And we are really good at adapting as humans, but that means we have to put us in situations to adapt to that, which means we have to simulate, we have to use visualization, we have to use repetition to better do these things and do it more often. So take advantage of that ability to adapt and put yourself in deliberate discomfort. We want to build tolerance for uncertainty. And while it may not feel good, you can do it, and it will get easier to do the more you do it. Think of it like an ice bath. The first time you go in, it's going to be terrible. It's going to be really hard to do. But if you do it every day for a year, well, it's just going to feel like another part of your day. And while there might be an initial reaction, you might feel some things with it, that discomfort is going to be way less intense. It's going to be a whole lot easier to manage. It's not about turning off the discomfort, especially if we're reaching for high levels. We have to get comfortable with it and be able to push towards it. So we got to adjust. We got to build up the skills to handle it. Visualization of contingencies can help too. These are mental reps for when things could go wrong. It increases our ability to better deal with hard situations or to feel more in control if you've already played it out mentally, because we've already rehearsed it. We've already saw how it's going to go. We talked about that in the past with Michael Phelps already visualizing his goggles filling up with water, and then that actually happened during a race, and he already had a plan, so he didn't panic. He just got to work on the plan. We talked about this with episode 28 with mental rehearsal and using visualization to better set ourselves up for success by visualizing the ways it could go wrong and not getting stuck on them, but preparing for them. We don't want to avoid the possible negatives. We got to prepare for them so we can best deal with them when they happen. There are a lot of skills and tools you can use. We talked a lot about these things in distress tolerance skills in the episode in the past. That's a great one to check out if you want to. A lot of things that people use is breath work and heart rate control because that physiological control tends to give us more mental control. And these are easy to use in the moment while we're doing things. Some skills are hard to use in the moment while things are going on, but that breath work piece can be very helpful. So try it out a little bit. Try these skills and see how they are working for you so you can try and use things in the moment and see which tools are going to be the best to use in the moment. We also got to use decompression routines. This is how recovery improves clarity and prevents emotional carryover. By signaling to the brain that period of stress is ending, this shift allows the nervous system to move out of high alert mode and into a state of rest, helping to process emotions and reset your focus for personal time. So this decompression routine is a way to turn off the work that you're doing. When you're working in these high stakes world, it can be really intense and it can be really hard to turn it off sometimes. So we have to find ways to turn it off and signal to our body that that is done. It's the same kind of thing that we're doing with like a bedtime routine, that we're signaling to our body it's time to shut down, time to relax, time to go to sleep, so it gets ready for that. So routines can help give our body like clues or signals of what to start doing, and it can get ahead of us and start doing it for us and set us up for that success. And then post-performance analysis, reviewing not just what you decided, but how you decided it. Post-performance analysis goes beyond evaluating outcomes to review the decision-making process itself, identifying not only what happened, but why it happened. It is a critical component of a learning culture, allowing individuals and teams to build on success and avoid repeating mistakes by understanding the cognitive and procedural factors that led to a result. A great example of this is Tom Brady. Pre-snap, he made a lot of reads and he held composure late in games, which led to the significant success that he had in the game of football. It was driven by his elite pre-snap read and exceptional composure in those late game situations because he consistently used his mental preparation to diagnose defensive schemes before the snap, enabling him to make effective adjustments and execute plays with precision under pressure. While that moment was there, while there's a literal clock ticking, he would be able to look at these things, make the best decision he needed to, and find success and take advantage of things. In a lot of ways, quarterbacking, if you really think about it, is kind of like intense problem solving right there in the moment with only a couple seconds to do it. So some questions to think about that I want you guys to write down, reflect on, and send me your answers because I want to hear how you guys are thinking on these. I've got some really cool answers. It's been very interesting and insightful. So I want you guys to keep sending me those answers through social media or email or any other way you can contact me. First question, when was the last time you froze under pressure and what caused it? Let's reflect on it and think about how this came about. Second question, do you tend to overanalyze or react impulsively under stress? Let's view our pattern. What are we doing? How are we handling it right now? Third question, how do you train your mental pause before making high-stakes calls? Have you ever even taken a mental pause? What does that look like? How do you do it? How do you make sure you do it? How are you going to remind yourself to do it next time? And then last question, what's one system or rule that could simplify future decisions? So what's something you could implement now into your decision-making process to make things easier for you in the long run? Let's get to work and get things changing. Reflect on those things. Let me know your answers. Based on the answers you give me, I will give you some tools and skills you can use right now to improve where you are at. A couple last-minute tips before we get out of here. The 3-breath rule is always good. We want to do that before making major calls. So try and take 3 slow, deliberate, deep breaths, making sure you breathe out longer than you breathe in before making a major decision in whatever you're doing, whether it's a relationship, it's your life, it's your career. Journaling. You want to journal the why behind big decisions. Track the pattern of bias. Why did you decide what you decided? The more you journal on these things, the more you'll see the pattern and see maybe you have an avoidance tendency that's popping up, or maybe you have a confrontation tendency that's popping up. Let's see what is happening. Practicing small discomfort reps. Speak up first in meetings. Take cold showers. Give yourself short deadlines. You want to practice that stress inoculation by giving yourself small stressors to show yourself you can handle it and help increase your resilience to handle bigger stressors as they show up later. We can also build decision playbooks for repeat scenarios like performance, personal, or finances. This could be a situation that you fall into quite often, like how do I budget every month, and trying to use this process, this playbook, to repeat the scenario in a successful way so it builds into a new habit and becomes a new routine. And then a weekly debrief ritual. What was the best decision? What was the worst decision? And what was the lesson learned? Being able to journal and reflect on those things is going to help us see what we can do better and grow as individuals. Resilient minds, premier results. This is what we're doing here at Premier Performance. We're trying to build you guys up in all the ways that we can so you guys can find success in your life. While the podcast is great to give you guys awesome tools and awareness of these things, we like to work individually with people, whether it's through workshops, public speaking, or even one-on-one, to tailor these tools to you guys specifically, which is why I bring up engaging with me so much, because the thing that's going to help you get the most from this is engaging with us directly so we can give you specific tools that are going to work for you in your situation. And that's what we're willing to do. So don't be afraid to reach out and help us build that premier mindset together as we all reach that premier performance with what we're doing. Share this episode with anyone that you think could benefit from this information. Maybe you have a coworker that really struggles with decisions. Maybe you have somebody in your life that's having a hard time making a hard call in a hard spot. Whoever it might be, whoever comes to mind, send it their way, see what they think. That might really help them. It might set them up in some really cool ways. And if this is really helpful for you, leave us a review. It would be really helpful to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Any of these places would be great. We love hearing from you guys, and it also helps us get this podcast out to more and more people, which is our ultimate goal. So if you could do that, we would really appreciate that. It does mean a lot to us. I make it a point to give you actionable tools to find success in your life. So I want these things to work for you guys, and I want to know if they are working. So let me know. If it's helping, tell me. If it's not, let me know. I want to help these things work for you guys the best they can, and knowing whether they're working or not is the best way to figure out if it's working or if we need to adjust it or if we need to tailor it a little bit to your situation. I love staying connected with all of you, and my goal of this is also to build a community, which is why I want you guys to engage with the social media, get involved in these community areas, because we're going to connect you guys with other high-achieving professionals so that you guys can all work together and keep on building that community together. So stay connected. Let us know how things are going. Let us know what's working, what's not. We love hearing all of it, the success stories, the failures, and anything in between. You can reach out in a few different ways. The first one is email. My email is tmailer@premierperformancereno.com. My last name is spelled Mahler. You can text or call me directly at 775-561-0056. We have the Instagram and the TikTok with the same name, which is premier_performance_Reno for both of those. Get involved there. We're going to keep on adding stuff there. We got new stuff coming out every day. We have the Facebook and the LinkedIn page, which are both the same name as well, which is Premier Performance LLC for both of those. So again, jump in those communities, new stuff coming out every day. And then we have the Twitter or the X account at Premier Reno LLC. So follow along on there. And then our website, www.premierperformancereno.com, where we got all of our site information, all of what we do. It connects to the podcast, and we're going to put up cool new information on there as well on a pretty regular basis. So make sure you guys get involved and connect with us however you can. If there is a struggle in your life going on right now, you do not have to get stuck with it. We can work through it together. Let us know what's going on, and let's do the work. Let's get these things behind you. Next week, we're going to talk about procrastination and mindfulness. So we're going to keep going, and next week we're going to talk a little bit more about inaction, whether that be purposely through mindfulness, trying to not take a lot of action, or if that is procrastination and that we can't take action, we can't get started. So we're going to talk all about those things, why it happens, how to deal with it, how to overcome it, and how to use these things to find more success in your life. So take advantage of these skills, go try them out, use them in your life. We have to practice these skills in all contexts, so we have to use them. We can't just learn about them, we got to put them to use. And let me know how it's going. If there's anything I can do to help, let me know. I love being a resource for you guys, even if it's just to answer a question. So don't be afraid to reach out. And I hope you guys all have a great week, finding success in what you're doing, having a great time while you're doing it, and just keep on building. We're going to come back next week and keep on putting out more episodes every Sunday. So check back in, and we'll go from there, and I'll talk to you guys soon.